Hey everybody, happy Father's Day if you're celebrating that. If you're not, that's fine too. I hope everybody's doing well. It's another Sunday. You are here on the line. This is the Sunday show after dark. I feel like I should lean into the microphone and say, hey everybody, it's time for the Sunday show after dark. Get those phone calls coming in now. If you've got evidence and good arguments and reason why we should believe in a God, we want to know genuinely. It's also the continuation of Zen mode, so the trolls aren't even going to bother calling in to get my goat because they can't. Paul's going to be in charge of the mute button. I'm just sitting here, and we should be having a good time. Genuinely, though, what we're looking for. If you believe in a God, if you believe in something supernatural, and you think you have good reason for that, and I don't just mean some like esoteric God is everything, God is everyone, that stuff's kind of useless because we can't really evaluate these really bizarre esoteric God notions. I mean, they're of no value to us, and they also don't represent one of the biggest issues that we're constantly trying to address, and that's that on behalf of their religious views and the strength of their convictions, people are voting to instantiate particular parties and people and regimes and to marginalize people and to impact others' rights. You can't do this because my God doesn't want you to do it. And I never hear from the God. I only hear from the people who are saying, and then the people are competing and disagreeing. It's been an incredibly unusual week, and without much hyperbole, I think it's worth letting people know that the world is increasingly less stable. Not just the United States, where there's conflicts and protests and lies, I think is probably the best way to put it. It was funny to me to hear from people in Australia who were saying, oh, we've seen the LA riots and this is like a war zone. And I'm like, I literally just got off the phone with somebody in LA and I watched the various late night shows that are filmed in LA and I saw the footage out there. There was no riot. There were peaceful protests that were then escalated by a couple of different groups, one of which was the National Guard coming in to basically stand there and funnel people to specific areas. Another problematic group are the gang members and other people who weren't involved in the protest, but used those protests as a means to engage in looting and property damage. They show the videos of these Waymo vehicles being lit on fire, but if you really watched, that was it. They showed that same clip over and over and over and over and over again, because when they actually show the protesters, there's no riot. There's nothing going on. And yesterday, in honor of the Army's 250th anniversary, Donald Trump decided he wanted to be like Kim Jong-un and have a grand military parade to show off the United States military might, and to, flatter him. And they expected 250,000 people, and the estimates right now are that about 10,000 people showed up. It was nice and quiet. You could hear the wheels creaking on the tanks that rolled by. It's a strange place that we live in right now. And I know that Andrew Seidel and I had talked some about the possibility of a civil war which is a weird thing to say. And genuinely, I was just talking to Paul about it beforehand. I have no idea what a civil war looks like in 2025 in the United States. But when you look at what else is going on in the world, not only do you still have the conflict in Gaza, but Israel has now branched out to Iran, and Iran has retaliated, and there have been missiles that have hit Haifa, and the Russia-Ukraine situation is worsening, and Trump is, I guess, playing both sides. Oh, I'm sorry. The peace president has just announced that if Iran doesn't stop, they will face the full might of the United States military. This is the peace president that people kept falling in to defend. It feels weird to acknowledge that the conflict is going to increase most likely, and that there may be civil war or any number of things. And yet, yesterday, almost nobody showed up for Trump's military extravaganza, and yet many, many thousands in cities all over the United States showed up for the No Kings protest. And I think my favorite moment from that, apart from constantly refreshing the news and seeing nothing about violence or conflict or anything like that, even after several governors decided to call up the National Guard in anticipation of those violent left-wing liberal hippies, which never materialized. But I think my favorite moment was one of the networks was showing what was going on in, I think, New York City. And then they introduced Mark Ruffalo, who gave a 3 to 5 minute, I guess, kind of passionate interview where he was positive and upbeat and incredibly well-informed and passionate about this, and talking about, what the Trump administration and the current state of the United States and what we're actually standing up for, and how, this shouldn't even be a partisan thing. This, we're in this position with no kings. And when he showed up on screen, I just remembered that moment where Loki says, "But we have a Hulk."
Mm.
And I was like, it's, Mark Ruffalo's smash. So this is a call-in show that isn't focused on politics, but I want to mention, we know that there's a lot going on today. We know that there's Father's Day. We know that there are conflicts, and we know that there's frustration. We still genuinely want callers to call in and see if they can teach us, educate us, enlighten us, inform us about why Paul and I somehow have missed good argument and evidence for God. And even if we don't wind up agreeing on what is or isn't good evidence, it would still be interesting to see if we could maybe, because if you say, I believe in God because the Bible tells me so, I think Paul's probably got an audio clip already queued up just to respond to that. There you go. And a cup. But we really want to try and find out exactly what it is that we're missing. So I'm in Zen mode. Paul's on mute. Paul, what do you think about all this stuff? And do you think we're likely to get a good God defender tonight, or are we probably going to go in circles?
Well, I'm eternally an optimist. Actually, that's not true. I'm generally a pessimist, but but
you're optimistic about eventually not being a pessimist.
That's true. That's true. I'm remembering back to all the Father's Days when I sat in church and sat in the pews, and the message was often one of, it's okay that your earthly father was terrible, because you have this heavenly Father, and that God is actually maybe using your the failures of your biological father, to draw you closer to him. That was always one side of the coin. And then the other side of the coin was always, well, you fathers, God is counting on you to be the spiritual head of your household, and you shouldn't let your wife do it. She's not authorized or qualified to do it. You, the man, have to lead the charge, and if your kids fall to hell, that's on you. That was always the interesting two-sided coin that happened on this particular day. If you if that resonates with you listening to this show, and you want to let us know why one or the other situation is the appropriate situation that we should be thinking about, we should be framing all this, why that those kind of framings are legitimate and good and helpful. To me, those are both incredibly harmful messages to send to people. But maybe I'm wrong about that. I'd love to hear that kind of call.
I just got a
And
message from Arden, and I genuinely don't know if she's fucking with me or not. But I was over there looking, and I was like, we're a few minutes in, I'm vamping, and there are 0 calls. And I was like, did we make sure the call lines were? So are they on now?
Yes.
the
Yes.
call lines weren't on. Oh, shoot.
They weren't actually open. They are actually open now. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine.
That's all right.
It's so good. I imagine this is good, because that means there are several theists out there right now who are saying, I'm trying to call. It's not going through. I don't know what's going on. If you're a theist and you tried to reach out in the first few minutes, get your calls in now, because the lines weren't actually open.
That's right.
But they are now. And I see the call screener is actively working. Huge thank you to Stephanie for screening calls, and to all of our mods and everything else. Paul, as I'm in Zen mode,
Yes, sir.
I'm going to need you to be an asshole on occasion, if at all possible.
I will do my best to be Canadian angry, as we call it, as it were. I do actually want to put one more pitch out there to theist callers. Please. You may well look at the screen and say, you know what, Matt and Paul are so set in their ways. They will reject everything that I say. They will make fun of what I say. They just won't hear it. Their hearts are hardened. They've hardened their hearts in unrighteousness. That may be true, but this is an audience that is at least half comprised of people who don't believe. And the Holy Spirit can work, not just in Matt and myself, although that would be a great miracle if Matt or I think that would be a great prize for the kingdom if Matt or I were to come back. But if the Holy Spirit is telling you to call, it maybe isn't Matt or I that he wants you to talk to. So, this is your chance. We don't let you proselytize. We don't let you, preach a sermon. But if the Holy Spirit is prompting you, the Holy Spirit knows what to say, and should be guiding you to greater the kingdom. So I'll just put that out there as encouragement. Shall we open up with our first caller?
I'm ready.
All right. Our first caller is Bill out of, I believe, I assume California and not Canada. Welcome, Bill.
Yeah, California. Hello.
Hey, what's on your mind today?
Hello. So I heard you guys kind of discussing this a bit earlier about Trump and everything, and I heard this argument that I personally couldn't come up with a refutation for. So I'm just trying to play a devil's advocate position, kind of, that essentially, like, advocating for other positions like secular humanism, it's not adequate for convincing, like, the general populace into going away from religion, and it's better to not throw the baby out with the bathwater and keep religion, but try to advocate for something like Jefferson's Bible, to remove all the non-scientific and immoral parts from religion, rather than going towards atheism.
Well, first of all, what makes you think that they're separable?
What do you mean?
Well, the kind of Christian that I was, for example, would never. Oh, I guess what you're trying to say is that you would prefer the kind of Christian that I was to try to convert me to a different type of Christianity, as opposed to convince me that Christianity is false.
Right, like towards a very progressive view, but but religion is still necessary. You can't get rid of it entirely, or it's not good.
Oh, so are you? I'm confused. Is this just a what if on your part? As, hey, what if we need to keep religion because atheism and secular humanism aren't going to convince people? Or are you asserting that that is the case?
I'm asserting that it is insufficient to convince people, and
To convince people of
yeah,
what?
that's it.
To convince people of what?
To convince people to no longer believe in religion.
I'm not trying to convince people to no longer believe in religion, and that's not the purpose of secular humanism. Secular humanism is about how we should live in this world, even whether there's a God or not, because we don't get to rely on that God to fix our problems. So what problem are you trying to solve that you think secular humanism is insufficient for? Because I don't want to keep something that isn't true just because it's useful.
Right. So I that's why I don't think the topic is completely like I'm not trying to convince you guys of religion, like the topic of the stream, but like Ayan Hirsi Ali had that famous article that it's better for people to believe in religion. So in
Well, see,
you know
Ayaan Hirsi Ali is a fraud in a right-wing think tank who left Islam, hung out with atheists for a while, and then decided to become a Christian because she found it was she's convinced that it's going to be more effective in her desire to fight Islam. I don't have a desire to fight Islam or Christianity. I have a desire to fight irrationality and lies across the board. And so I'm only going to believe things for which there are good reasons. And I'm never going to advocate for the comforting lie. So even if Christianity is more effective in opposing Islam than atheism, that doesn't change my position at all, because my position isn't about what is more likely to convince people. It's about what is demonstrably true.
okay, but what about like not your position specifically? Like, what would you want for everyone else?
I would like for people to care about the truth again.
Do you think that it's pragmatic to believe it's that like the majority of other people would?
I don't know. I don't know what you're asking. You asked me what I would like, and I said I would like for people to care about the truth again, to believe things because they're true, not just because they're convenient or comforting.
So I don't think people would do that. Most people would do that.
Well, I don't care what you think they would do, and I'm not even necessarily convinced that I should care what they would actually do. Um, we need to convince people to care about the truth. If people don't care about the truth and they don't care about sound reasoning, are you just going to give up, or do you try to convince them to care about the truth and sound reasoning?
I think what if it's a futile attempt and that it's better to just try to pacify them with a toned down version of
Yeah,
religion rather than
I think that
trying to
is an
go like all the way
incredibly
to the other side.
I think that is an incredibly arrogant and condescending position that pretends that it infantilizes everyone else. It's like, hey, Paul, you and me, we don't need that God stuff, but all these dumbasses who can't buy into the truth, who just can't be moral if they don't think there's a God looking over their shoulder, they need religion, so we should do that. You'll never convince me to do that, but at the end of the day, even if it turns out that's the most effective way, it's still not true. And it's an admission on your part and everybody else's part that you're willing to advocate for a comforting and effective lie, more willing to do that than you are to stand up for what's true. And I won't do that.
Then would you disagree with, for example, the famous Karl Marx quote that religion is opiate for the masses, and also
Yes.
Voltaire famously says,
Yes,
"I'm not an
yes,
atheist."
I disagree. Yes, I disagree with those, and I don't give a fuck. Citing what somebody else thought about religion and what they thought was effective is irrelevant. So, Bill, do you think there's a true religion, or are you just saying they're probably all not true, but we should keep using them for convenience?
The latter.
Okay. Well, then it's strange because, I mean, you weren't listed here as theist or atheist, but I have no interest in having a back and forth about what you suspect might be useful and what I suspect might be useful. I only care about what's true. And so if you're not advocating for the truth of religion, I don't have anything else to add to this, Paul.
Well, I guess,
do you
Bill, I
think
was
that-
wondering, Bill, when you're trying to say, hey, let's push a softer version of the religion they already hold, and it doesn't matter what's true or not, are you suggesting that the argument that we would give to extreme versions of religion would that we would lie to them to move them to be more progressive, or that we would attempt to make them care about truth in order to become more progressive?
I don't think it would involve lying to them. We would try to advocate for them to strip away parts of the religion that we disagree with the most.
On what basis? On what basis would you convince a fundamentalist to move toward a more progressive version? What would you appeal
I
to?
think some of what you guys have already been doing is great, like, talking about slavery in the Bible, but I think trying to tell people to leave their religion wholesale and believe that no God exists, that's like too big of a step. And I know Matt said that that's a condescending view, and I
It
completely
is.
agree with that.
But
But
Bill, you're not answering my question. I'm saying let's forget this whole, and frankly, Matt or I have never attempted to deconvert anyone, this is the home run to get someone all the way deconverted. It's always just, hey, is this bit true? Is this bit true? Is this bit true? I've never hit a home run where it's even though I get people every day in my comments saying, hey, you helped me discover things. It's never that home run. You didn't answer my question. What tact do you use? What tactics are you going to get? And are you saying that we don't try and convince them that a more progressive version is more true? Like, what's the appeal to the fundamentalist?
I think trying to say that, oh, you can still hold a version of your view, you can still believe in a very deistic type of God that doesn't, where like the bad commandments are metaphorical and that, the non-scientific parts are metaphorical. So it's
I have an
just
important
reading the
question.
Jefferson Bible and cutting out the bad parts.
Go ahead, Matt.
Bill, have you ever been a Christian or a sincere believer in any religion?
I'm an ex-Muslim.
Cool. What convinced you to leave Islam?
I think I'm very similar to you in that I would prefer an evidence-based position. But what you said before, it is condescending, but I do think other people don't have that same perspective. And from the long history of this show, I think we have seen a lot of people where that isn't enough for them and they don't have that same mode of thinking.
Okay, see, you keep coming back to reasserting your useless and irrelevant position, and it's incredibly condescending. And your proposed alternate solution is one that I think I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb, and I'm going to bet that I speak on behalf of Paul and myself. We, as former fundamentalists, would not have ever been convinced to stop believing in a God and stop participating in our religion just because somebody offered us a softened, watered down version. I would have called that out, as I did when I was in the Navy, as a fake version of Christianity. Either there's a God or there's not. And either the Bible is representative of what the God thinks or doesn't. Either the Quran is representative of what that God thinks or doesn't. The notion that, especially when you're reading something like the Bible, where it says, let God be true and every man a liar, when you start considering this, oh, you don't have, the Bible doesn't, or the Quran doesn't necessarily mean this when it says that. You can softball it and do it this way. Not only when I have wholeheartedly rejected that as heresy and fought against it. But I think you're overestimating how many people you're likely to be able to convince using that. What evidence do you have that you can come up with a softened, watered down version of religions that is sufficiently soft that it works as a way out for fundamentalists?
Okay. So I don't have like a specific source for this, but for example, in Islam, I know that there is more people going towards away from the Hadith and going only like Quran only. So Hadith has a lot more of some more extremist positions, and I know Quran also has a lot of bad parts, but Hadith is like more extreme. So when theists find that those positions are indefensible, and what a lot of the Hadith is a part that kind of talks about Muhammad marrying 6-year-old and all of that. So they hear these arguments, so they go towards a softer position. And I think that when they do that, it's kind of easier.
Okay, I'm fine with the notion that there are better and worse versions of religion, but the same pathway that leads that could potentially lead someone from fundamentalism to a more liberal version of their religion is also a pathway from the more liberal version of the religion into fundamentalism, which is the shift we saw with regard to Christians in the United States after 9/11. It's also the shift we've seen in the broader Muslim community outside of Muslim-controlled countries. The Muslims in the United States, especially the populations like up in Dearborn, hey, they're getting tattoos and they're drinking and they're having fun and they're not following this. And they're just, the laffy taffy, jokey Muslims, the good Muslims next door. And except that's not what's happening in the UK and some other countries. But this is why if you build someone's foundation for their beliefs on a lie, how do you fix it when they figure out it was a lie?
Well, I thought the point was, as an atheist, we don't say that it's a lie, because to say it's a lie, you'd have to say it's untrue.
No, Bill.
We just say there's not enough evidence.
Bill, you misunderstood what I meant by the lie. The lie is you manufacturing a fake version of the religion that is softer. That is the lie. You're basically writing Quran 2.0, Bible 2.0 by creating constructs around it, acting as if they're coming from God when they're not. They're coming from you. That's the lie. Religions may or may not be a lie, but they haven't demonstrated that they're true. This is why they persist, and your attempts to dislodge them with something you've manufactured, when people find out you've manufactured it, what do you then use to keep them from going back to more fundamentalist versions?
I don't know what you mean by that I manufactured it, in that, so for example, for any specific religion, we can point to the inconsistencies in the religion to say that the God of that specific religion.
What the fuck do you think I've done for 20 fucking years?
All right.
There's nothing about pointing out the inconsistencies in a religion that any way require you to say, hey, let's soften the religion and give you a softer, comfier side of Sears. The thing that we should be doing, if you get people who actually care about what's true, when you point out the conflicts and the contradictions in religion, they should leave that religion. Now, they may not, but I mean, what do you want to do differently than what Paul and I want to do, which is to advocate for skepticism and humanism, scientific, rational conclusions? What is it you want to do? Because the only thing you've come up with so far seems to be, hey, let's keep the comforting delusion part of this and just make it so they don't have to be assholes on behalf of their religion. But as a secular humanist, you not only don't have to be an asshole on behalf of the religion, you don't have to be one at all.
Okay.
And you don't have to have a religion.
as an atheist, I think, have you been asked this very popular question that, oh, if you're an atheist, you don't believe in God, why don't you, murder and steal and do whatever you want? I think that's a very common
Yes.
question, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I think like our response is we have a conscience that prevents us from doing it. But the fact that so many religious people ask us that and ask me that kind of points to me that if they didn't have that barrier, that God or the commandment preventing them from doing
That's
so,
because
that they would be
you're
doing that.
that's because you're incredibly arrogant, Bill. People can
hmm
learn. You are assuming that people can't learn. You're assuming that people currently entrenched in religion who ask questions like that cannot learn. And yet, go listen to, Penn Jillette, who's problematic on some stuff, gave a brilliant answer to that when asked, what's stopping him from going, as an atheist, from going out and raping and killing as much as he wants? And Penn's answer was, I do go out and rape and kill exactly as much as I want, which is zero.
Yeah, I know that clip.
Okay.
But
Well, my
isn't
answer
the
is
fact that
different.
other people are
My
asking
answer is
that
different. It's because my ethical system is based on an understanding of game theory and empathy and the recognition that we have to share space and be cooperative. That's all you need. I don't need a religion. I don't need a God. And I find it incredibly offensive and incredibly weak to keep infantilizing all these people. Like, you found your way out, but these other people, they can't learn. They can't find their way out. It is some of the most condescending stuff I've ever heard. And even in your brilliance, you have yet to come up with a plan that is anything more than speculation to keep the weak in a religion and just soften it around them. I'm sorry, but I care about truth and I care about data. And I have zero interest in your speculations or your arrogance.
Well, I think that yes, this is definitely speculation, and we might, need more research into it. But the one of the causes of, or people have speculated that the cause of the nationalism is that new atheism kind of brings a wrecking ball to religion, but doesn't put anything concrete in its place that's kind of
I'm
like a
not interested.
unifying.
I'm not only not interested in your arrogant speculation, I'm not interested in listening to you sit around quoting other people's arrogant speculation.
Okay, yeah, I suppose I don't have any evidence for it, but
But is it not true that to move someone from a fundamentalist position to a more progressive position, that you need to pick apart the reasons why they're holding on to the fundamentalist position, i.e., the inerrancy of the book, or the divinity of the inspirer of the book? Like, before someone sees a reason to progress that way, do you not need to chip away at the truth claims of the fundamentalist version?
I do. I have tried to, for example, convince family members or friends about this, and I can point to all the inconsistencies and the scientifically inaccurate parts and move them towards a version that's closer to deism. But it's almost impossible for me, at least. Maybe I'm just not rhetorically gifted
Well,
in that way to push them from deism to atheism.
let me just take the pressure off you. A family member is the least likely person to change someone's mind about religion. That's just you're too familiar. It's too familiar. Don't put that burden upon yourself. If I heard you correctly, that you were talking about family members, that's just the least likely person. You may need to count on other people for that. Second of all, I think you affirmed the answer to my question, which is that in order to make someone think that a progressive version is more appealing, you do need to undermine truth claims about the fundamentalist version, right? Because the fundamentalist version, if you're holding on to the truth claims of those, you see, as Matt pointed out, you see no reason to move to the more progressive version. Would you agree with
Right.
what I said there?
and when they get to that progressive version, they kind of say, "Oh, this just makes me feel good," or "I have faith," and I don't have anything to
That's fine.
respond.
But Bill, I think this is important. You
Mhm.
seem to be
No, I
advocating
agree.
that we not. Okay, so you agree. So the first step in whether or not you're deconstructing someone to land in a more progressive version, or deconstructing someone that may eventually land in an atheist or agnostic or some other position, the first step is chipping away at the truth claims, right?
Right.
Okay. So would you not agree then that we are in harmony, that we're in lockstep, that truth that discussing these truth claims is the important part to do, and where the person lands after that is kind of not up to myself or Matt or you.
Okay. So are you then saying that if they land in a deist position, then, you know, our job is done?
No, I'm not. I think so. Let me give you an example. I recently had Dr. CJ Cornthwaite on my channel. He is has a doctorate in uh, religion of sorts. I forget exactly what his doctorate in, from the same school as Wes Huff. And he knows far more than I do about all the problems with the construction of the New Testament. That's his specialty, and he can list off the problems with the New Testament better than I can, which is why I had him on my channel. Although William Lane Craig responded to him, so that's thing. But he finds Christianity to be comforting. So I tease him and I push him, and we are going to have these conversations about what's keeping him in that same space. But what we both agree, what he landed in a very progressive version of Christianity, I landed outside of it. We're in lockstep, and we go we can be on the same program to say, you know what, those initial steps are the truth claims that everyone should go. We're both advocating that people look at their religion more accurately than they do, right? And that's the only way you move to a progressive version, is that you look at your religion more accurately than you currently do. So, like, I guess what Matt and I are saying is we're not advocating for a goal that they land at. Like, we didn't score, we didn't win one for the team if they land on atheism versus progressive. We landed one for the team when we say, oh, they recognize that, the Gospels were, and I'm sorry, I'm using the Christian examples, but the Gospels are actually anonymous, and some of the books in the New Testament are pseudepigraphal. They're not written by who they say they are. Oh, and this is historically inaccurate, and maybe there weren't dinosaurs on the ark. Like, these are all little wins toward truth, and that's Matt and I are not the arbiters of what the tipping point will be, and which is the final straw that breaks someone, either deconverting in one direction or another. But you called in to say, well, that we're doing it wrong, and I'm basically saying it seems like the goal you're advocating for, the tactics are identical, and it seems like now you're agreeing that the tactics are identical.
I also have one quick thing, not to derail, because I want you to respond to what Paul said, but you also seem to think that the goal is to make people atheists, and that has never, ever, ever been my goal. My goal is to get people to care about truth. And if in fact the religious claims aren't true and aren't demonstrably true, then I think it is a mistake to believe them. And that's true not just for religious things, but for everything. And so my goal is not to make atheists. As a matter of fact, I found it really annoying that the manual for creating atheists that was published, that was basically just hey, let's do the Socratic method, isn't actually a manual for creating atheists, and creating atheists wasn't and shouldn't have ever been the goal.
Okay. Yeah. So to kind of respond to what Paul said first, so I think from watching your shows, like the starting approach is, what's your evidence that a God exists? But I think a better approach is, if you want to have some sort of theistic God, fine, keep that. But what's your evidence that all of these bad parts of, or all these unscientific parts, all the parts that we don't want, what are the evidence that those are true?
Isn't that exactly what I just said? Isn't that cutting to the truth claim parts of it?
Right, but like not starting with a God figure.
Well, we don't drive the calls, right? We do invite that because the God belief, once you lose the God belief, for me that was the first one to go, not like that part of Christianity is moral or immoral. There's no one size fits all here. But the callers do drive how that's going, right? Or are you suggesting that we should be doing something different?
No, I think you guys are right. You've convinced me. I think, yeah.
Because this isn't a goal, or like this the channel purpose isn't we're making atheists. The channel is, what's your truth claim? And if the truth claim is God, great. If the truth claim is the Quran is inerrant, great. If the truth claim is Jesus walked on water, great. Like we're calling in, asking for what people think is true. What do you believe, and why? And it, I think we're on the same page, Bill. I just wanted to make sure that we are.
Right. So if someone, for example, says that they believe in a deistic type of God that doesn't interfere with human affairs too much, then there's no problem with that.
Well, I have lots of problems with it. I think it's an incredibly stupid position to claim that you believe something that you simultaneously believe is undetectable. A deistic God does not manifest in reality in any detectable way. So deists are among the most ridiculous positions, advocating for them being able to detect the undetectable. But when it comes to what sort of positions they're going to take with regard on behalf of that deism, you can't get from deism to God doesn't want gay people to get married or have sex. You can't get from deism to we are God's chosen people and we need to bomb and destroy these people. So from a broad harm perspective, deism is definitely less harmful, but that doesn't make it any more rational. As a matter of fact, I would argue in many ways it is less rational, but it's kind of a useless, less impactful proposition, if that makes sense.
Right. I completely agree with the second part, but about the first part, what if they say, "Oh, it just makes me feel good"? I think it's not.
So instead of claiming that they've detected the undetectable, they've decided that they're going to say they don't care if it's true. They just want to go with what makes them feel good. I think that's similarly irrational. The processes in your mind that lead you to conclusions do not exist only for that particular proposition. So when you train your brain to reach flawed conclusions on one subject, the likelihood that you will do it for other subjects increases as well. How long is it going to take before someone says, hey, I don't have to justify a deistic God, it just makes me feel good? Because first of all, there's no reason for a deistic God to make anybody feel good. Why would a God that never interacts with reality make you feel good? It's bizarre. But if you're going to believe something because it feels good, that is a slippery slope that can lead to anything. It could lead to Muhammad as God's prophet. I just believe that because it makes me feel good. I believe that we should put women in bags and not allow them to drive, and that it's okay for us to bomb people and enslave people, all just because it makes me feel good. It's one of the things where the people on the right were doing this constant, the facts don't care about your feelings. They're right. The facts don't care about your feelings, but I do. I care about people's feelings. I care about empathy. I care about humanism. And also I care because the people who are acting, prioritizing their feelings over the facts are the ones that are most likely to do that in other circumstances where maybe this one isn't harmful, but the other ones would be.
Yeah, I think
So the way that
I think bad epistemology is a harm in and of itself, right? Because it like one of my provinces in here in Canada is having a measles outbreak all of a sudden because people, are using distrust of science as a blanket. They were fed a distrust of science for a particular reason, but they're now applying it broadly, and it's causing harm. So poor epistemology is a form of harm, in my view.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a very good argument.
Okay. Well, Bill, we've chatted for a while. It seems like we've come around to actually being on the same page a little bit. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate that you've been putting thought into this. And we just yeah. All right. Anyway, I appreciate that. Did you have any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, yeah, I think I was just personally struggling in the conversations that I've had where, people say, "Oh, this just makes me feel good," and it was difficult for me to tell them, "Oh, believe this other thing because it's more rational, but it doesn't make you feel good." Like, believe something that doesn't make you feel good because it's more rational. And it's just a hard thing to
So
say, I
Bill,
think.
there's a question I like to ask people, and maybe this will tell us: if you had terminal cancer, would you want to know or not?
Like incurable.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think I would want to know.
Okay. I would. And this is one of those areas where I recognize that I might be the weird one. Because I've had conversations with people who absolutely would want to know, and I've had conversations with people who absolutely wouldn't want to know. What I can say is, from my completely armchair, anecdotal, biased, or sample size, the overwhelming majority of people who've told me they don't want to know are either theists or still toying with some notion of an afterlife. Although I've met plenty of dyed-in-the-wool atheists who say this as well. I absolutely want to know. I want to know as many true things and as few false things as possible. If I only have 6 months left, that's going to fundamentally change how I spend those 6 months. It's going to change, and it shouldn't. We should probably be living all of our time as if it's going to be up in 6 months, but then we would just destroy the world. We have to plan for a future that's longer than that and then be surprised when it gets cut abruptly short. But if I have a terminal illness and have 6 months to live, I absolutely would want to know, because there's things I would want to do differently knowing I was going to be dead in 6 to 8 months than I would if I continue to think I might make it to 70, 80, 90, or 100.
Right. So this is a common philosophical question. Is it better to know or not to know? Like, is ignorance bliss? So you're saying that that's a position that you hold personally, but would you advocate for other people to hold the same position, that to know is better than not to know?
No, but I would encourage people to care about the truth. And if I knew if I knew if you were terminal, Bill, if I was your doctor and you said, I don't want to know if I'm terminal, I would not tell you. I would not impose my view onto you. But if I knew whether or not you were terminal and everybody around was telling me, including the government, that it would be potentially harmful for me to tell you, and you told me that you wanted to know, I would fucking tell you, because I respect the individual's autonomy and dignity. And so I'm not in the business of trying to impose any of my views on anybody. This is the fundamental difference between something like secular humanism and religion. Religions change mind by conversion and coercion. Humanism changes mind by discussion, data, debate, that sort of thing. If you don't want to know, I wouldn't tell you, and I'm not going to tell you that you need to know. But if you ask me which one I think is better, I think it's absolutely the one of knowing the truth. Because it's incredibly selfish, I think. This is still just my personal take, to say I wouldn't want to know. Because there are people who care about you. And if you die unexpectedly because you didn't want to know, that's going to change how they interacted with you during that time as well. You will have robbed people of the chance to make amends, and you will have robbed yourself of the chance to make amends. You will have focused on trivial things and gotten angry about things that don't matter. There's a reason there's a song called Live Like You're Dying. It's because in addition to recognizing that you could make arguments either way, something fundamentally changes in some people when they know they're terminal about how they view things. And that's why my friend Dave Warnock, who's previously on this channel with his dying out loud stuff, he's got ALS. He's going to die. He is terminal. He just doesn't know when. He's lasted longer than the initial predictions, and yet he is in terrible shape. And yet he is sitting there as a hero to me and others for being the type of person who's not only wants to know, but wants people to know that they wanted to know and wants to tell people what it's like facing that head on so that other people can learn from his experience and make that decision on their own. This isn't about forcing anybody to do anything.
There are some studies, and I don't know if you know, like where people's political positions are more based on their social circle and their emotions and like, you know, knowledge and like logical arguments. Have you heard of them?
See, you keep coming back to this. I don't care
But
what
I'm
studies
thinking
you've
that,
seen or what the point is. It's really strange. It's like, oh,
my point is that,
Bill, are
right,
my political positions based on my social circles, or are they more likely based on evidence?
for you, I would say evidence.
Yeah. So I don't give a fuck if I'm different from the rest of the people. My big thing is that I'm not going to assume that the rest of the people are incapable of actually learning and growing and becoming better as I did. I don't think I'm fucking special.
Well, I think what the evidence, like what the studies I'm referencing shows, is rather like what's more effective than convincing people is that, you know, the people surrounding them and their community holds the same position. So, you know, when
So
you say that other
never
people,
mind, Bill. Never mind, Bill. I don't have anything more that I want to discuss with you because I just pointed out multiple times what I'm not interested in, and you keep coming back to it as if it matters or I should be interested. I'm not. It doesn't matter. You're going back to justify your kind of arrogance at dismissing people. Oh, well, studies show that people do this and value that. I don't give a shit what the studies show about what people do. I want to know what the studies show about what people can change and what they are willing to accept and under what circumstances. The fact that most people have been lied to, the fact that most people don't have the tools needed to figure out how to discern those lies, the fact that we have a rise in people advocating for flat earth, the fact that we have a rise of people advocating anti-science positions, that they're willing to elect a felon and pretend like what's obviously true and right in front of their face isn't. That is about the psychology of groups and people in the current environment. That doesn't tell me anything at all about how to fix it. You're not trying to fix it. You're trying to alleviate the harm, and you have no way to demonstrate that what you want to happen could work at all. I'll stick with the truth.
okay, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, that people would be able to come to an approach, an evidence-based approach, but it's really hard, I think.
Yeah. I think your instinct is right, Bill, that you do if people say that they don't care about truth, then I think the first step is actually convincing them to care about truth. And I think it sounds like you're agreeing with that. Because if you're talking to someone who doesn't care about truth, you know, you can you can move them to a different state or move them, but that's not we're not adjusting we don't have the power to change someone's social circles or those kind of things, right? So if they don't care about truth yet, step one is make them care about truth. if some of the other things fail. So, Bill, I'm going to give you just again the last thought before I let you go.
Right. So yeah, I think I was wrong in thinking that like logical arguments aren't as powerful as emotions and people's social surroundings. But the best we can do is try to present arguments and evidence and hope that they appreciate those more than emotions.
I hope so.
Okay.
Because
Thanks, Bill.
if I ran across a kid and that kid was having difficulty making sense of reality, my instinct is to do everything I can to help them get over that so they can actually engage with reality. At no point is it ever my instinct, or do I consider it a justification or justified position to say, well, they're having difficulty coming to grips with reality, so they're weaker than me and everybody else who came to grips with reality. So let's give them a better delusion. I mean, I can see circumstances where there are people whose mental state has them so dissociated from reality that something like that could be useful. But I think those people are more likely candidates for institutionalization and protective stuff. I don't think it represents a significant portion of the population. I think I have, despite the world I live in, which is really weird now, I still think I have a little bit more confidence in humanity in general than you do, Bill. But I appreciate that you're looking for something, and hopefully we can find something. But I'm not going to sacrifice the truth.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
thanks.
Thank you so
Thanks for
much.
calling, Bill.
And thank you.
All right. Did you have any final thoughts to add? We were on that one for quite a while, so don't know if you had any.
Oh no! If we got another
thoughts?
caller, especially another theist, I'm fat, dumb, and happy.
We have, so the good news, bad news. We have open lines. So if you are a theist, this is one of your best chances to talk to Matt and myself. So definitely we have room for you, but we do have a theist caller who is waiting to talk
Yay.
to us. So we will talk to Cindy in Kentucky. Cindy,
Hey,
welcome
Cindy, how
to
you
the
doing?
show.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Can I start by apologizing to Matt by being rude to him last time I called? He asked me how much. If what? I'm sorry.
If you must, I honestly, I don't remember it, and I may not remember it, so I'll have to apologize, because I don't tend to hang on to this stuff because I do so many calls in 20 years. But if you feel you were rude, or if I felt you were rude, I accept your apology and let's move on.
Okay. I still believe in God, but you asked how many, is there an even number of grass or an odd number? And I couldn't say, I don't know. I couldn't say it, and I ended up giving you a stupid, what's your definition of grass kind of thing. And that was rude. And I've talked
No worries.
to my
Let's just move
psychiatrist. I talked to my psychiatrist, and I've talked to a number of people, and I've watched a whole lot of videos you recommended, and I got to the point where I don't have any reason at all to believe in any God, not just this God or that God. But my initial thought, do you believe in God, is yes. And I don't know why, because I don't want to believe untrue things, and I don't have
which God
anything
do you
to
believe
say
in?
it's true.
If somebody says, do you believe in God, and you say yes, which God are you saying yes to?
At this point, I don't know.
I don't
Okay,
understand
I started out
that sort
Christian.
of thing. That sort of thing makes no sense to me. If I said I believe I have the winning lottery numbers, and somebody said, "Okay, what are they?" I could tell them. I wouldn't say I don't know. I don't know how anybody can say they believe in something while simultaneously saying they don't know what it is they believe.
Okay, I was Christian for a long time, fundamentalist, and I read the book, and I lost my faith there. But I immediately dropped into Ifa, which is an African indigenous faith, because a minister from that religion convinced me that that made sense. And now I'm looked at it since our last talk and came up with, I got no reason to believe in that either. But
So,
I don't know
so Cindy,
why.
I'm going to try and ask this one more time, and then definitely I'm going to kind of make sure Paul jumps in here, because all I'm trying to do is figure out. For me, it's not possible for me to say I believe in something, and then when somebody says, "What is it you believe in?" I say, "I don't know," because I don't know how it's possible to be convinced X is true without knowing what X is. And so I asked you what God you believed in, and you said, "Well, you used to be a Christian, then somebody convinced you of this African religion." That is nowhere near an answer to my question. If you can't tell
I
me what
don't
God you
know
believe,
how to answer.
if you can't tell me what God you believe in or give me any characteristics of it, I'd love for you to explain then how it is you can say you believe in something without knowing what it is, because I don't understand that either.
That's why I called. I figured you'd nail me with something that made sense.
Cindy,
Just
I
is it
can't
questions.
explain it.
okay? So Cindy,
I
so
can't
let me ask you a
explain it.
couple. Let me ask you a couple follow-ups. So, can you tell me
Thank you, Paul.
any characteristic about the God that you believe? Like, so we're not asking you to give him a name or associate it with a human religion. What is a quality or characteristic of the God that you believe in?
Okay, we can start with the deistic, started everything going.
Okay, so you believe that there's a creator being.
Yes.
Okay. Do you merely wish that to be the case, or do you genuinely think that that is a truth claim?
I was at the point where I would say I wish it was, but when my granddaughter asked me, "Do you believe?" And it's like my answer was an automatic, emphatic yes, and I'm not sure how much of that is fear left over from I don't believe in hell, I believe in science, I believe that I want to know the truth as much as possible, but I can't stop myself from saying yes.
Okay, so thank you for that answer. Would you say that it is more, rather than saying you have reasons to believe, that it is your intuition that there is a creator God? It sounds like you when
That
it's one of those
sounds
tests where
better.
it's like okay, so it's your intuition that there was a creator God. Do you
Yes.
care if that is correct or not?
I wish I could say no. I wish I could say
Why?
no, I don't have truth behind it, therefore, no, this does not exist. I wish I
No,
could
no,
say that.
Paul,
That
Cindy,
wasn't quite
Paul
my
was
answer.
asking
My
if you
question.
care whether or not it's true.
Does it impact your life whether it's true or not?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yes.
So one way you can answer this yourself, Cindy, is what do you have any thoughts about what this God wants you to do?
No, I have no idea.
Okay, that's fine.
I,
So if you have no idea what this God wants you to do, then this God shouldn't, your belief in this God should not impact your life in any way, because until you know what, either think you know what this God wants you to do, you can take no action on its behalf. Like, you can't say, oh, I'm voting this way, or I'm encouraging this, or I'm doing this because I think it's what God wants. And so that sort of God is completely irrelevant. That sort of God is something that can't help you with any decision, and that no decision should be made on behalf of. And so while you have an irrational belief that you're struggling with, there's no action you could take on behalf of that belief. And so your belief is more innocuous than, let's say, any fundamentalist out there.
okay, innocuous does not mean good. I would like to
also
be
doesn't
able
mean
to
bad.
say no.
Well, what does innocuous
Okay.
mean to you, Cindy?
Innocuous means that I don't hurt people because of some random book or belief. I will
Well,
take my belief, what I actions are on what I can see by science works. My beliefs don't come into it. Does that make
Well, I guess
sense?
I think what when Matt and I say the word innocuous, we're more referring to that it is non-impactful. So you can say that my belief in whether or not there are birds flying over my house right now, is not rather non-impactful, right? It
Yeah,
doesn't.
It's not an edifying statement. It doesn't provide any moral or intellectual instruction at all.
That's all we're saying. So it's not an insult
Okay.
to say that your belief is innocuous. All we're saying is that your intuition is that something created the universe, which is I get it. I understand that intuition. All Matt and I are saying is the state where you're currently at. That's probably not a decision that you should stress too much about, because by your own admission, it doesn't impact your day-to-day decisions. So it's probably not worth your mental effort to be that bothered about. Does that make sense?
That's very comforting because I kept thinking that the belief in the God was the part that was hurting people.
Well,
Does that
if
make
you listen
sense?
if you listen to our last call, I think Matt and I did. That's fine. You don't need to, but for those in the audience who did, Matt and I advocated that your epistemology, like how you come to decide what's true and false, absolutely can have a bearing on your life, and that is how you make decisions about what's right and wrong or true or false. Absolutely does affect your life, and Matt and I would both say, well, if you've come to this deistic thing in your words, not our words, in your words, irrationally, that is a cause of some concern, but it is not a cause of large concern, or at least I don't think you should make it a large part of your concern about your life. I love the fact that you are actually sitting there thinking, what am I doing that might be harming people? And I think if you focus on that question, am I doing something that is harming other people? Then you can set that who created the universe thing well back, because you're asking a far more important question.
Yeah, when I say innocuous, so imagine you have a tumor. That tumor could be malignant or benign, but even benign tumors can grow and spread and be problematic. But if in fact your God belief is roughly some sort of tumor, yours, I would say, is benign. My mom's God belief is fucking malignant as hell. And all of the Project 2025 and MAGA fundamentalists, they have a robust, fast-spreading colon malignant cancer that is going to destroy the world that we're in. And so it's almost trivial that you have a benign version of belief, or a relatively benign version of belief, because you at least recognize that you can't shake this notion. And I would say that you're not actually convinced there's a creator. You are just terrified of acknowledging that you're not convinced. And so you put this creator in a position where you don't know its qualities, you don't know what it wants, and that means it can't actually impact your life. And you don't ever have to say, I don't believe. And that provides you comfort, because it's clear, and I could be wrong, but it seems clear to me, you are terrified of saying, I don't believe in God. And in part because you seem to think, I suspect, that if you were to say, I don't believe in God, that this is exactly the same statement as, I believe that all gods are a lie and will never change my mind. And those two things are not the same. It's okay to say, I don't believe in God, just like I don't believe the number of blades of grass on earth is even, and I don't believe the number of blades of grass on earth are odd, even though I know for a fact it must be one of those two. I'm not going to make a commitment to one of them. And so it should be, I am not convinced of the number of blades of grass. But you have some fear of actually saying that. So if you can't get over that, I'd much rather you at least acknowledge, as you already have, that whatever God belief you have probably isn't impacting your life, at least not too negatively. Otherwise,
it took a while to get there. But yeah.
It'll take a while
what
longer.
I do. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. There's a delay, and you didn't know. I'm just saying it's going to take a lot longer for you to keep working through stuff until you reach a point where you're comfortable with who you are and what you think about this, where you're not fear-driven anymore. You can, and this is one of the reasons why we work with and recommend recoveringfromreligion.org. Not only do they have online chat counselors, but they have a hotline that you can actually call. They're not trying to convince you. This is something we should have mentioned to the last caller as well. RFR is not trying to create atheists. They are trying to counter harm done by religions, whether those religions are true or false, it doesn't matter. Religions are in fact contributing to harm in society, and real people are dealing with that. And so we want to make sure that we provide resources for them. That's what Recovering from Religion does. And that's what we do on here when I'm not being a prick.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks,
right.
Cindy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
All right. This new Zen Matt, I don't know what to do about that. We have
the same old Matt. I just enjoy, don't get me wrong, I enjoy this too. But there's a whole bunch of people out there like, oh, Matt's got an anger management problem. No. I enjoy getting irate at people who don't give a fuck about the truth and are proud of it. I don't mind ignorance. I despise willful, voluntary, prideful ignorance. And so I got no problem smacking it around, but I can also do this.
Well, let's we have another theist in the queue. So let's see which version of all of this we're going to get from Prophet Daniel Has Spoken, calling all the way from Australia. Welcome. Should we call you Prophet? Should we call you Dan? What should we PDHS? What should we call you?
You can call me Prophet Daniel Has Spoken, or you can just call me Dan. That's fine too.
Okay.
Hello, Matt.
All right.
And Paulogia. Am I getting your name correct?
Yeah, just call me Paul.
Okay.
That works. Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, Matt and Paul, how are you guys doing?
We're doing well, and it says here that there's anthropological evidence for God. I am very curious about what that might be.
Yeah, okay. So you might have known the premise that there was a science experiment that's being conducted where children as young as 2 and 3 sort of gravitate towards the agency relationship. Okay, that's the telltale signs of how human beings are by default have some form of belief in the Creator, and
No, it
to
isn't.
become atheists, they only need to
No, it
be
isn't.
schooled out
Daniel,
of theism. Well,
Daniel,
that's just an science
Daniel,
experiment.
Daniel. That's not so. Evidence that children gravitate towards authoritarian structures isn't evidence for a creator. It's evidence that that's the type of creatures we are. We are not the type of creatures who are abandoned by their parents. Like I raise a lot of reptiles. We have 30 species, and they interact differently. There are some lay eggs, some don't, but whether they do or not, there are some that lay their eggs and leave and let the eggs hatch on their own. There are others that incubate those eggs until they hatch. There are some that raise their children. For example, we've got Kenyan zebra skinks, and it's very important that you keep their litter in with them because they will eat the poop of their parents, which provides them with a much healthier gut biome. The fact that children, human children, behave like humans when humans nurture their kids and you are born basically weak and stupid and have to rely on elders is about who we are as humans. How is that evidence for a God?
Look, it is a science experiment being conducted, okay, where human beings
Daniel,
display the relationship to an agency, okay, and
Daniel.
if you go globally,
Hey, Daniel.
if you go globally around
Daniel.
different communities,
Daniel, I need
Daniel,
to.
can you
Sorry,
hear me?
I need to mute
Daniel?
you for a sec there, Daniel.
Yeah.
I muted him for a second.
Yeah. I don't need you to tell me that it's a science experiment. I already know that children do this. This is how humans are. What I'm asking is, what is your case that human children behaving in this way is evidence for a creator God being behind it? That's what I'm looking for. There's no science that points to a creator. There's no math that includes a creator as a variable. There's nothing about how we interact, with other humans that I see any necessary link to a God. So I'm just trying to figure out, I'm fully fine with the scientific studies into human behavior. What I want to know is, what is your link from the human behavior that is observed and verified that shows that this points to a creator?
You've been unmuted, so go ahead there, Daniel.
Yeah, okay. So there's anthropological evidence across global communities, even communities that were really away from civilization. They also believe in the concept of creator.
Explained.
It's just not little children.
Daniel,
it's adult behavior where adults.
Daniel, I'm interrupting you. I hope you can hear me because I'm not going to stop interrupting you. There are cultures like the Paraha that don't have a God concept, but I don't need you to tell me anything at all about human culture. I've already conceded that we have science experiments that confirm humans act like humans. The question that I've asked now twice and will not be asking again is, how does this point to a creator? And you can either answer that question, or you can either answer that question, or I'll move on and let Paul talk to you or find a better way to ask this question, because I'm done having my time wasted. When I ask a question, it's for a reason, and I don't need a lecture on what the science facts are. I need you to explain the justification for your expanded conclusion because of those facts.
Why wouldn't this prior knowledge that humans have point to the creator? Why wouldn't?
Thank you. When I asked you what the reason was, you gave me a fallacy, an argument from personal incredulity. You're saying, why wouldn't it be the thing that points to a creator? And that is fallacious and demonstrates that when you try to actually answer the question, you expose your fallacies.
Look, what I'm trying to say to you is that's part of prior knowledge that humans have.
No,
so
sir.
Why wouldn't you consider prior knowledge to
repeating yourself is not going to be any more effective than it was the first time. It's not going to be any more effective than it was the first time you committed this fallacy. I need a non-fallacious. I need a non-fallacious justification from you. Can you provide that or not?
No, I didn't quite understand your objections to what I'm saying.
I pointed out
You,
that it
you
was a
need to reword
fallacy.
it.
I pointed out a fallacy. It was an argument from personal incredulity. That instead of saying, "Here's how I know these two are connected," your case was, why on earth wouldn't I think they were connected? And that is shifting the burden of proof to me or somebody else when you're supposed to be meeting that burden of proof. Can you meet your burden of
Okay,
proof or not? No. Can you meet
as
your burden
human
of proof or
beings,
not? I'm
yeah,
sorry. Can
yeah,
you meet
okay.
your burden of proof or not?
Yeah, hang on for a second. As
No, I
human
don't need to
beings, we
hang on for a
accept
second. I
and
don't need to hang
reject.
on for a second.
We
I don't need to
accept
hang on for, I
and
don't need to,
reject.
you're never going to,
Let me make my statement.
you're never, ever, ever going to speak over me. You are not going to get to make your point. I asked you if you could do what you said you'd do, and now I will need you to do it. Don't you dare tell me to hang on. I'm not fucking hanging on. You're either going to meet your burden of proof or I'm going to be done with this call. Which would you prefer?
You got to be a bit more patient. Can
I
you?
don't need to be a bit more patient. You need to actually demonstrate your argument and your case for what you're claiming.
As human beings, we accept and deny claims based on evidence. Even we accept it based on evidence and we deny it
Daniel,
based on evidence.
Daniel,
That's what we do as human
Daniel,
beings.
I
Okay,
need you to,
so
I
it's
need
not a
you to meet
question
your
of burden
burden.
of proof
Daniel, I
being
need
on
you to
my
meet your
court.
burden of proof. Daniel, I need you to meet your burden of proof because I've already demonstrated that your first attempt was a fallacy. You need to come up and present an argument, a syllogism, a structured position supported by evidence to show that human behavior indicates strong evidence for a God. You've said you can do that. You've said you can meet your burden of proof. I'm now going to ask you one final time to meet your burden of proof, and I will let the audience and Paul determine whether or not you've met your burden of proof. But I'm done jousting with you because you will not engage despite being called out for a fallacy. So can you meet your burden of proof? If so, please do it.
Because you're asserting in vain that it's a fallacy. What I'm saying to you is humans have this prior knowledge.
Okay, I muted you. I'm sorry. I apologize to Paul. I'm now going to bow out of this conversation entirely because you're a liar. You claim that I just asserted it without any justification. Not only did I point out the fallacy, but I described it. And I also showed how it's a shifting of the burden of proof. So either you're a troll or a completely dishonest interlocutor, or you're someone who it's a waste of time for me to continue talking to. I now relinquish entirety of this call to Paul. And I'm sorry, bud.
You don't have the courage. You don't have the knowledge.
Daniel,
You don't have the courage. You're absolutely terrified.
Daniel,
Yeah.
do you want to continue having this conversation? Would you like to shift that conversation to
me
me,
names.
or would you like to be done? Do you want to talk to me for
I
a
would
bit?
like to continue the conversation.
Okay, so allow me to. I would like to try to steelman your position, and you can tell me whether or not I'm articulating your argument correctly. Is that fair?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you are saying that there is anthropological evidence that humans at a very early age they accept authority based, power regime. They accept authority in their life, and that if you look across multiple societies and cultures, that this seems to be universally prevalent, and that human beings in general, by and large, for the most part, accept that there's God. That's the premise. And the conclusion that you're drawing is, therefore, God is real. Have I come anywhere close to your argument?
You're right. You're there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I don't think that it follows that because let me Daniel, do you believe in evolution? Do you accept biological evolution, that kind of thing?
I have reservations against it.
Okay, fair enough. It doesn't matter which way you answer. Okay,
to evolution,
so I won't go into evolution with you. I will keep it other. Is it possible that humans have accept things that are false? even on a broad
Yeah.
scale. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So
So
I'm aware of the idea. I'm aware of the idea that the evolution biology has to say that there were a series of false positives because of which the species have evolved, conceding to an agency out there. So this agency relationship that we have contracted is a result of false positives in the evolution sequences of human beings. Correct? So I understand this. So if this premise has evidence in evolution biology, then what we need to do is my assertion is that the evolution biologists need to identify the set of genes that are responsible to usher the agency relationship in us. Insofar when they don't do it, when they do not identify the set of genes that are responsible to usher the agency relationship, then what I'm asserting is it's not a product of evolution, but it is a product of prior knowledge and memory.
But let's just say, for example, that we can't that there isn't a set of genes. Like, it's weird to think that there's the God-believing gene, right? Like the human brain.
That's exactly you.
We
I
don't
agree with
know,
you.
but like
I absolutely agree
even
with you.
things like gender preference or left-handedness. Like, there's not we've picked the gene that we can go in CRISPR and edit out to make sure that we have no more left-handed people, right? Like, you understand that these are combinations and interactions.
That's
Like, you're
exactly
asking
even
for
I believe.
something.
I too believe that evolution biologists have got it completely wrong. They said
Okay,
that
fair enough.
agency relationship has
I need to jump in
evolved
for a
in
second,
us
Paul,
over a
if
period
I
of time.
can.
Go ahead, Matt.
I think it's funny, and I'm not talking to Daniel, I'm just talking to you. I think it's funny that Paul, you got to the exact point to describe his position, which I was already at before Daniel decided to tell me that I lacked the knowledge or the courage and was terrified of engaging. Then when we find out that Daniel has reservations about evolution, we also find out that Daniel doesn't understand evolution and is now trying to once again shift the burden of proof onto the scientists to come up with a scientific explanation based on Daniel's flawed understanding of genes. And unless they do, his proposed explanation wins out. So it's logical fallacy after logical fallacy with burden of proof shifting, a denial and misunderstanding of evolution and genes in order to shift the burden of proof further. Yet I'm the one that lacks knowledge and courage. I rest my case.
So, Paul, can you please explain what Dan just said to me? What is his understanding about how evolution biologists come to think about this agency relationship to be found in human beings through false positives?
So, Daniel, what you've done, you agreed with my syllogism, right? That anthropology says that humans, by and large, believe in God, and the conclusion is therefore God exists. And you are saying, until a scientist proves to me that that's not the case, I don't care that it actually logically follows. You're just, because, of course, there's correlation is not causation, right? Like, just the fact that we accept things is not the only possible. An existence toward God is, do you agree, the existence of God is not the only explanation as to why we might generally believe in gods, right? You articulated at least one other reason. So it's that your conclusion doesn't follow from your premise that Matt is pointing out several logical fallacies.
No, the premise that I stand for is belief in a God or a creator is prior knowledge in human beings. Not just in human beings, even in animal kinds. Have you come across the chimp called Coco who learned human sign language and communicated to human beings that after death he would be going to a happy place?
Yes, I'm Robin Williams' friend Coco. Yes, yes, but
that's correct. So it's not just
now,
in human beings,
Daniel,
it's
let me
also
throw it
in
back to you.
animal kind.
Daniel, let me throw it back to you and say if Paul said, well, can you point to the scientific evidence that we have prior knowledge versus just prior aptitude? Would that be a good argument?
Look, I don't quite agree with your semantics, playing with semantics. Human beings by default are believers. This is the conclusion drawn through extensive science experiments, okay? Science
That's actually not
experiments
true at
reveal that
all.
human beings
No matter how many
by
times you
default
assert it,
have
it's
faith.
not actually the finding of science. You don't care about the truth. You're not going to be honest. And when this was called out and
No,
pointed
don't
out,
just assert vainly,
you decided to claim that I lacked knowledge and courage when you're the one who's here making claims that every time we make any sort
I'm
of
just highlighting information.
every time I'm still talking, and I'm going to remain talking because it's my fucking show. Every time we point out a problem with what you're saying, you've come back with, yes, but it's been scientifically shown X, when that's simply not true. And your ignorance of and rejection of science, except as a matter of convenience, is embarrassingly bad.
Then you better clarify to me. You sort of clarify your position to me and my misunderstanding.
I've already clarified my position and pointed out the fallacies. It's not up to everybody else. It's not up to everybody else.
You're not clarifying or helping me.
It's not up to everybody else to prove you wrong. You're going to have to do your own homework. The rest of us are tired of doing your homework for you. It's not up to us to prove you're wrong. It's up to you to prove you're right. Now, you can't do that. And every time we've given you an attempt to do that, you have instead suggested that we need to prove you wrong. And that is a shifting of the burden of proof, and it will not get you anywhere. So I don't know why you keep insisting on doing it, but don't think for a second that you've accomplished anything other than demonstrating you are committed to remaining irrational and avoiding any chance of you demonstrating the truth of what you boldly assert while rejecting good science and then tossing out garbage interpretations of science as if they were real. Go get yourself a degree, submit your thoughts to peer-reviewed journals, demonstrate that what you're claiming is true with scientific rigor rather than just your flawed, fallacious, repeated misunderstanding of science, and then come back. But until then, Paul and I keep asking you questions.
Explain to me my
I'm sorry, I was still talking, but we just want to prove for a second that you were just sitting there on hold, muted, talking and talking and talking. And I bet if we had a recording of it, you would have said nothing of any substance at all. Paul and I keep asking you to demonstrate your case. You claimed that you could meet your burden of proof. Then you tried to shift the burden of proof 2 more times. It's clear now that you cannot meet your burden of proof and that you are disinterested in honestly trying. And so I don't care what you think of me or what name calling you're going to try to do with me, how I lack knowledge and courage. You know what I don't lack? Knowledge and understanding of these subjects, but you do.
So Daniel, basically where we're at here is that you failed to convince us that universal belief in X means that we should conclude that X is true. And you seem to agree that with my articulation of both your premise and your conclusion. I think you might need to go back.
If you think I understood science, I give you the opportunity to be able to explain to me my misunderstandings instead of just accusing me left and right, top and bottom,
Daniel,
which is uncivil behavior. So
now we're uncivil. Daniel's just a whiny.
So stop accusing me and explain how I have misunderstood science.
It's not our job. It's not our job to teach you all the things that you don't understand. You should
that are correctly unfolding with you guys.
You should go and study. Or have you heard of Google? Have you heard of universities? Have you heard of any of the things that we learned this stuff? And so did the scientists that we're referencing. This is not the call in and let me, in my ignorance and in my confusion about everything scientific, see if I can not only shift the burden of proof, but get a bunch of atheists to do my fucking homework for me. I've done enough homework. I'm not here to do your homework. You should do your homework. And what you've demonstrated is you can't even do the basics of your homework. And so if you had made any effort at all to even attempt to grasp it, instead of asserting that I was lacking knowledge and courage and that scientific findings are what they actually aren't, if you had made even the faintest of attempts to do that, I might have more interest in teaching you some more about how we know. And I know that we have experts on here like Forrest and Erica who can hand walk you through and would hand walk you through findings of evolution to demonstrate the truth of all the things that you seem to want to deny. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to engage with people who are supposed to be presenting evidence for the existence of their God, something you repeatedly claimed that you could do and repeatedly failed to even make an attempt to do. You can complain all you want about how, oh, we're just rude or we're not teaching you. That's not our job, and you didn't do your part.
So normally I like to give the caller the last word, but I don't think I'm going to let Daniel have the last word because we have several theist callers on the line, and I want to make sure we get to them. So Daniel, if you want to go find a scientific study that says therefore God, please have that ready for next time. Otherwise, Matt and I are a little bit dubious, and it doesn't matter how many people believe a thing. What doesn't matter how early they believe it, that kind of thing. That doesn't lend you to be justified in a conclusion. Therefore, that thing is true. That's just an argument from popularity, or any number of other fallacies. So, Daniel, thank you for calling. Do some homework, and we will talk to you another time, hopefully with a little more homework. But Matt, we have some other theist callers that I do want to get to before we have to wrap things up. So I will go with the one that has been waiting the longest.
Cool.
We're going to talk to Timothy. It says Timothy's in China, and he wonders if atheism is not self-contradictory. Timothy, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey.
Very
How
good.
are you guys?
Hey, we're doing okay. What do you mean by atheism and self-contradictory? Tell us why we're wrong here.
Well, I just wonder if atheism isn't self-contradictory in that
can you start with
all humans
Timmy, we saw that in the description. You're
Matt.
asking, is atheism? Yeah, we don't need you. So we already saw the thing. Is atheism self-contradictory? Paul literally just said, what do you mean by atheism and what do you mean by self-contradictory? We don't need you to repeat the thing. We need you to tell us what you mean by atheism and why you think it's self-contradictory.
The logic that leads to atheism, unlike the logic that leads to theism.
What do you mean by atheism? The atheism means lots of different things to lots of different people. So if we're going to have a productive conversation, we need to get on the same page about vocabulary. So what do you mean by atheism?
I mean the lack of belief in a God.
Okay. And what's required to not have a belief other than what's required to not have a belief other than I'm not convinced?
An internally inconsistent logic.
No. Timmy, listen to me very carefully. If I say, I am not convinced of X, that is identical to, I do not believe X. There's no logic behind that. There's no burden of proof. There's no positive claim. There is the rejection of a claim as unsubstantiated, or also it is the case that maybe you just haven't heard any argument or evidence. But if the only thing that is required is to not be convinced, that cannot be self-contradictory.
Would the thought of not being convinced not require logic?
No, people can be not convinced by maybe our hearts are hardened, or maybe we have an emotional, visceral reaction to God. Maybe the atheist doesn't believe it because they haven't heard anyone articulate it well. There's lots of reasons that someone might not yet be convinced. that have nothing
So,
to
for
do with.
example, I'm holding up a bag that's
Mhm.
licorice. Are you convinced this bag of licorice has licorice in it, or are you convinced that it doesn't?
I am convinced it does.
Well, you're wrong. It's actually empty. It has nothing in it at all. But your
Oh,
state
no.
of being your state of not being convinced that the bag had licorice in it can't be self-contradictory, because you could say, I'm not convinced because I haven't seen sufficient evidence. And yet you, on the other hand,
Wow.
decided that you were convinced in a flawed sense of something that isn't true. That's one of the fundamental differences. Atheism, as the result of skepticism, properly assigns a burden of proof. And until that burden of proof is met, you can't be convinced. But it's also possible to not be convinced in the sense like a baby's not convinced, or a 5-year-old that heard about God the first time just said, well, I've heard the concept, but I'm not convinced. That's all there is. There's nothing self-contradictory about saying I'm not convinced. Where's the contradiction,
Okay.
I suppose? I say, I am
uh,
not convinced a God exists. What does that contradict?
okay. I look forward to watching this video back again later so I can fully
Timmy,
take in
Timmy,
your lesson regarding the
Timmy,
bag there. It's
Timmy,
contradictory
Timmy,
in that we
Timmy,
have to have assumptions.
Timmy.
Yes,
I've
Matt?
just asked a very straightforward question. Are you going to answer it?
I am.
Cool. My question is, I'll repeat it. If I state I am
I
not
heard it.
convinced, what does that contradict?
The logic that leads to not being convinced of God is
Okay,
self-contradictory
Timmy, this is an
in that
incoherent.
your disbelief is
Timmy,
based
you can just
in
stop.
proof.
You can stop, Timmy, because your response is incoherent. It's clear that you haven't grasped what I've said, so maybe it's better for you to go back and listen to it. Because if the statement is, I am not convinced, first of all, it's impossible for that to be self-contradictory. The statement is an assertion. Nothing in the statement contradicts itself. In your case, you're trying to pretend that it is contradictory with some logic, but you haven't demonstrated what logic it contradicts, just that you think it contradicts some logic. Well, I can understand that it contradicts, let's say, the findings of people who are convinced that there's a God. The issue is, should they be convinced? But when you say it's self-contradictory, that's already demonstrably false. And when I say, what does my not being convinced contradict? And your answer is the logic of blah, blah, blah. You still have all your work in front of you.
Right. So you cannot prove the proof. So whether or not you see the bag is not something that you can know logically. You can only
Okay,
assume it.
Timmy,
Therefore, to say that
Timmy,
you don't believe in
Timmy,
God is self-contradictory.
Timmy. Okay, Timmy is incoherent and nonsensical.
Timmy, would you
I
accept
am
the
where my
premise that
argument is.
Timmy,
Probably
would you accept
both. Your argument definitely is.
I see.
would you accept the
I see.
premise that
Here we go.
would you accept the premise that some people believe things that are indeterminate, as in that the evidence they haven't thought it through, they haven't been exposed to the full argument. Would you agree that is the case?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And so if
Absolutely.
you applied that to a God claim, you absolutely could have people that have either not considered it in any kind of meaningful way and or have not been exposed to meaningful arguments about it. That kind of person can
Yes.
exist, right? So is that
Yes.
person also self-contradictory in your model?
I would say that this person would be dogmatic.
Why? If they've not, someone who's given it largely insufficient consideration is simultaneously dogmatic?
Yes, I would say that everyone contains logical flaws, no matter how
No, that's not what
incoherent
I'm
they may
asking.
be.
That's no, because would you,
And
Timmy,
usually
someone
in
who's
the
not
case
given
that
it,
you've described, someone would be dogmatic.
but how is someone who's given it no consideration simultaneously dogmatic?
They've merely asserted it without
No,
any former
no, as in
justification
they've
or
given
proof.
it no consideration. Like I have given no consideration to any number of things. Who I don't is Love Island still a show? I don't know. Maybe Love Island is still a show. I've given no consideration to who the winner of the next episode, the next season of Love Island is going to be. Does that mean I'm dogmatic about Love Island?
Is everything I say going to be considered absolutely incorrect no matter what? Could I call you by your name and still be incorrect in this debate?
I told you. This is not a serious person. This is not an honest person. This person is incoherent and dishonest.
You mean my argument, not me. I understand
No,
you're trying to be more logical.
no, I don't mean your argument. I don't mean your argument. I mean you. You are dishonest as fuck. Because we're sitting here trying to, oh dear.
Matt, you seem like a nice person to me as far as I can tell.
Clutch your pearls, bitch. I'm talking to you. You think that I rest my case. I rest my case. Thank you so much for proving me right repeatedly. This has been a waste of time. You can go away now.
Thanks for calling, Timmy, or maybe not.
You're not an honest interlocutor, not even in the slightest. We've pointed out your incoherence. We pointed out your problems. And then you decided to do well, nothing I say is going to be, okay. So poor pitiful me. I didn't call into your show and make a claim that I refuse to defend. Paul was incredibly kind to you from the start, asking you to define atheism, which you then refused to do, but then got around to it. And I pointed out, when you say atheism is self-contradictory, for a statement of I'm not convinced, it is impossible for that to be self-contradictory. And then when we asked you what it was contradictory with, you could not give an explanation. And when Paul and I tried to point out the problems with what you're saying, you decided that'd be a really good time to whine about how just anything I say is not going to be right. That's not our problem. That's not our fault. There are plenty of other callers who've called in, and they were able to say things that were coherent, that were correct, that were worth listening to, that weren't fallacious, and we were able to have a conversation. You can blame your failures on me all you want, and you can sit there and laugh while you down your copium, but you're not going to rile me up. I've already figured you out. Goodbye.
All right. Well, we have a couple more theists on ready to talk to us, so hopefully this goes a little better. We have, forgive this poor Canadian. Tom is MI. Is that Mississippi? Is it Michigan? I don't remember. Which state is MI? Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan.
At one point, I knew these. All right.
It also lists Tom as Tom's pronouns, and Tom's not a pronoun; it's just a noun. But okay.
We'll let that go. Tom says that God uses evolution.
Cool. How can we know?
Okay.
Well, I think about evolution, from here, and I don't know that much about it, so forgive me if I say a lot of things wrong here, but I had a couple ideas of my own about evolution. Because they always say
do you have any scientific expertise in the field of evolution?
Absolutely not.
Then why would you have then why would you have thoughts of your own, and why would they matter to anybody?
Well, that's why I just want to ask a question, or a couple questions.
Okay. Well, if I had my own thoughts about quantum mechanics and I have no expertise, should anybody give a shit what my thoughts are on quantum mechanics?
Probably not. No, absolutely not.
You say God uses evolution. I just want to know how we can know that you're right, that God uses evolution.
Yeah, Tom, are you essentially saying that evolution is compatible with God, or are you saying that you can make the positive claim that God definitely was behind evolution?
Well, I think God could have created evolution, to do it, but that's not really my
Okay,
point.
so
That was just part of my thought process, sort of thing.
so
But
your
my
thought
point I
process,
wanted to ask,
just okay, go ahead. I'll let you ask your question. Go for it.
because they always say, evolution from natural selection. And in my mind, I always think that evolution from natural digestion might be a better concept than evolution from natural selection. Because it seems like over the last
Yeah,
100
I'm going to
years,
play
when
chess.
humans...
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was talking to
Okay.
producer.
Because, even the human beings, that we have changed over the last, let's say 100 years, we got taller, bigger, whatever. It's not necessarily from fighting off warriors, so to speak. It's more from what we eat on a day-to-day basis. And, our diet has changed. So we don't really evolve from natural selection. We evolve more from natural digestion. And I just wondered if the scientific, community has thought about that or has
Well,
studied about
so
it, for the last couple of years.
do you, so in your mind,
Right.
Can you tell me what evolution means? What do you believe evolution to be? Biological evolution.
I think everything has changed over the 4 billion or 5 billion or whatever many years, the Earth's been here for whatever reason. But evolution is always taught as evolution from natural selection, like things were fighting off things to, they got bigger, or they had to fight off something else to do this or whatever.
Why do you think that evolution is involved with fighting? Have you taken aboard the notion survival of the fittest? Do you think that
exactly?
So
that sort of
so
thing,
what
right?
do you think natural selection? You think natural selection has to do with fighting,
or just surviving? Where I think evolution
Okay.
might be more just from digestion of what different, organisms they have eaten, over the last 5 billion years. We didn't get the way we are because we had to fight off or, select. It wasn't a natural selection. It was more of just what we ate.
So I feel like. Let me ask you this: does evolution have anything to do with common descent in your view?
Common descent, as far as humans?
Do you know what I mean when I say common descent?
No, I don't. No.
Okay. So common descent is a very important part of evolution, and that is that all life on Earth has evolved from the same common ancestor, right? If you go back far enough, carrots and fish have a common ancestor. Humans and birds have a common ancestor. Again, if you go back far enough, right? So basically, the diversity of evolution describes the diversity of life on Earth, not why life is here, but why it's diverse. So that's a very important half that you seem to not be paying attention to, because of course, no scientist would say that eating seeds versus eating something else gave someone wings versus gave them gills. This is a very important part of evolution that you seem to not be paying attention to. It seems like what you're trying to explain is, in the recorded history that we have over the last couple hundred years, that humans perhaps have gotten taller or gotten more healthy and those kind of things. I get why you might suspect that, but that is really the last 100 years versus the billions that came before that. I think you would agree is rather irrelevant, right? Like it doesn't speak to the fact that humans may have gone from an average of 5 foot tall to an average of 6 foot tall has absolutely nothing to do with 4.5 billion years prior to that, right?
Right. That's why I always I'm thinking that it's more digestion than it is anything else. So it shouldn't,
what's weird is I'm a breeder. We have 30 species of reptiles. I can tell you that even if I didn't know anything at all about evolution, there is no reason to think that what my reptiles eat in any way impacts the phenotypical or genotype of their offspring. It's Mendelian genetics pretty much down the line. You take an albino and breed it with a non-albino, and you get no albinos, but everything's heterozygous for albinism. There's nothing about whether you're feeding it rats or mice or ASFs that determines what the offspring are going to look like. The natural selection just means nature. It could be that what is selecting against certain things is their diet. If you are a species that eats and has offspring that likes to eat poisonous things, you're less likely to have offspring that continue on. And so we are the descendants of the species, of the ancestors that didn't eat poisonous things. Yes, you can eat things that impact the individual's health, but there's virtually nothing you can consume as part of your diet that is going to fundamentally change your genes that are then going to get passed on to your offspring. This gap in understanding about evolution has not only led you to, not really understand what natural selection is, but it's like you picked a random word that sounds similar, like evolution by means of digestion. No, because individuals don't change, populations change. And the change is random changes in the genome, and natural selection then evaluates that, not as a thinking thing, not as a process with a goal, but either you have evolved to fit in the environment that will have you, or you haven't. And if you haven't, you're done, and you don't get to have offspring.
Yeah. You say, we don't pass enough from genes or from one person or one generation to the next. And why are humans so much bigger now than we were, 75 years ago?
I did not, I don't know what you think I said, but we absolutely pass our genes on to our offspring. That's what I just got done describing. The change in humans over a period of time is due to a number of environmental pressures, but it's not diet, because your diet doesn't change your genetics.
Tom, let's we're neither of us are Matt or Forrest or Erica, so you and I we're incredibly far apart on our understanding of evolution. I feel like Matt and I are closer to understanding it, but we are not experts. So, but I want to get to this. Tom, let me ask you this. Let's say you are 100% correct, and human evolution is entirely related to our diet, and that's the only driver. What does that have to do with God?
Well, if God, I'm a believer. Well, I'm a knower. They always say some people believe, some people don't. Some say they don't know. Some people actually do know. And they always leave that.
How do they know?
Always believe, don't believe.
Why?
Well,
no, hang on.
Extreme.
Why are we spending any time on evolution at all when you not only claim to believe there's a God, but you claim to know there's a God? How can we know there's a God?
You probably can. No.
Well, we probably can't. Then how do you know something that we can't know?
Because I had an experience. So.
What is this experience? What is this experience, and why can't I have it?
That's a good question. I'm not sure why the supernatural would pick one person and not the other. I'm not sure. But apparently I must have did something good in my life, and I was chosen.
Really? So you're better than us. That's the reason you know and we don't. You're better than us. That's cool.
I didn't say better. I just said I might have did something.
Well, you're saying you've had an experience. You're saying you've had an experience that we can't have, and it's because you did something right, so you're better than us.
I didn't say better. I never said that.
You didn't. I know. I don't need you to tell me. I don't need you to tell me what word you didn't fucking utter. I'm talking about the concept, not the word. You seem to have difficulty with concepts.
I would never say I'm better than anybody. Absolutely not.
But you think you earned a revelation where Matt and I have not earned the revelation.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I just said
I'm still wondering. Okay, how do you know that your revelation confirms a God?
If you did what I mean, I can't explain it. I don't want to try to explain it.
Okay.
But
I don't know why you called then, so I'll bow out now because I know Paul has good questions. I'm bowing out now because I know Paul has good questions, and I am now completely disinterested.
Well, no, my question, I did actually care how you related God to evolution, but similar to Matt, we want to know what you believe and why, and you now claim to know something, and you say that you know something because of an experience. Is this the Christian God that the experience revealed to you? Like, did this experience specifically point out Christian God?
Not necessarily, no. Not at all.
Okay, so am I correct? Am I correct in saying that you identify as a Christian, though?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay, so creator, you never read the Bible. Okay, so you have a general vibe about a creator God?
Well, for what my experience was, if he did that to me, then he knows pretty much everything that you're thinking and everything Matt's thinking and everything everybody's thinking. So, yes.
Prove it.
Okay. So that's my experience. Like I said, I didn't really want to talk about all that, but
I'll
talk more about it.
You want to talk more about something you don't know anything at all about than the thing that you do know something about that is the whole fucking purpose of this show. So instead of calling in to defend your belief, which is the whole reason for this fucking show, and you now claim to know it, you'd rather not talk about the thing you know. You want to call in to talk about the thing that you don't know anything about by your own admission. Are you calling just so we can educate you?
Yeah, well, I like thinking about evolution.
The purpose of this fucking show, the purpose of this show is for you to call in and educate us on how we can know that there's a God.
Yes, it's hard to prove. You can't prove it. But
I'm not asking you to prove it. I'm asking you, how can you demonstrate? Can you tell me what happened to you that convinced you?
I was shown miracles.
What, like what?
Well, what love looks like.
We've talked before about this, haven't we, you and I?
I don't know if we have. Who is this? Is this? I'm not watching TV, so is this Matt?
Yes.
It is.
Okay, Matt. I don't know if I've talked to you about it before or not, but there is
you've shown love. What were you shown specifically about love? Because I've seen love. I've seen people experiencing love. I've experienced love myself. What was the revelation of love?
There's like a chemical composition that you can't see.
We have talked about this.
No. You watched it. It was Forrest and someone else. You were watching.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Arden has corrected me. I was wrong. So, what is the chemical composition of love?
He just showed me what it looked like. That's all.
No. What is the chemical? If he showed you what the chemical composition of love is, you should be able to describe it.
I did. Yeah, it's like a clear watery substance that you could.
No. That's not a chemical thing. Right. So, for example, C11H17NO3 is mescaline. We understand there's a lot of stuff about chemistry. I don't know how you can know that God showed you the chemistry of love as a watery substance when you clearly don't know anything about chemistry either.
But I know there was love between a woman and her child, and that's the love he showed me.
I'm aware that humans have experience and that a mother and child often have a bonding experience and an emotional attachment that we call as love. But there's not a chemical for that. There's not a chemical formulation. And even if there was, that wouldn't in any way prove there was a God who showed it to you. Why do you believe that God showed you something that you can't then describe and that does not make sense to anybody?
You had to see it to believe it, I guess. But like I said, I didn't really want to talk about it. But,
Okay. You know what, Tom? I really don't want to talk to you.
Scientifically, you can't. What's that? Scientifically, you can't. Are you still there?
I didn't ask you scientifically, Tom. I'm tired of your excuses. I have no interest in speaking further with you. My apologies to everybody for listening that you had somebody call in who God revealed something important to. They don't want to talk about it. You can't prove it. It's no big deal. It's all, I know there's a God. Maybe I did something right in my life, but you guys can't do that. You're a waste of my time, Tom.
Sorry, to waste your time.
Thanks for
But
calling,
I'm glad
sir.
I got a little bit. Okay, thanks.
Actually, I shouldn't have said sir. I should have just said Tom because he wasn't willing to specify. But
Yeah,
anyhow.
that's true. I had heard this before with the chemical substance of love being watery. The thing is that if Tom would stop being so evasive, I think we could actually make some progress. Because the whole point of me asking questions isn't so that Tom can then answer with, "Oh, how can I prove it? Here's my proof." It's to get people to recognize that just because you had an experience, and I believe you had an experience, that doesn't mean your understanding or interpretation of that experience is correct. You might have felt like there was a God that revealed to you something physical or chemical about love. But the question that we can't ever get to, because Tom is on defense and wants to talk about evolution, which he knows fuck all about, the point that we need to get to is, how do you know that it was God who revealed this to you? And why is God revealing to you the liquidy substance of love, whether you call it jizz or chemicals, and not revealing it to all the rest of us? Why is it that, and God has decided to reveal something to you, and he does something that is unclear, confusing, and an absolute deepity. A deepity, by the way, is a thing that sounds really profound to people. Like, oh, God showed me the chemical formula for love, or the chemical nature of love. Okay. Well, but a deepity is, to the extent that it is true, it is absolutely trivial. And to the extent that it is profound, it is false. And so love isn't jizz or a goopy chemical or a watery substance. There are brain cognitive interactions, and we're all chemicals. I'm chemicals. I'm chemicals from what little hair might be on top of my head down to the calluses at the bottom of my feet. It's all chemicals. It's all chemicals in physics. But love is a label that we put on a complex set of human experiences. It's not one thing. It is not some substance out there. It's not ether. It's not, you've bought into a pseudoscience thing, and I reject your claim, because if in fact there is a call, or if in fact there is a message from God, I am unwilling to accept that a God could be so boring, banal, and confused as to send that sort of revelation rather than something that is useful and edifying to the world. I also have something we have to promote real quick before we get to this last call.
All right.
Arden wants people to go to linemerch.com because she's now got a graphic up of the Zerba shirts. That is Forrest's drawing of the Zerba shirt. Forrest's drawing of a Zerba. It's now on a bunch of shirts. Huge thank you to everybody who participated. We raised a lot of money for recovering from religion. It forced me to shave my beard. It is now at least starting to grow back. It won't be as long as I like it by this weekend, but it'll be, something. But we definitely wanted to make sure that we got the information out there to get people Zerba shirts if they want to. They're all up there. They're phenomenal, and I can't wait to get mine. But Paul, what do you think about taking this last call?
I think we absolutely should take this last call. We have Vicky from the UK, and she is a theist. So, what do you have for us tonight, Vicky? Uh-oh. Did I do something wrong?
No, I think she might have accidentally dropped when she went to unmute herself or something.
Oh no.
Well, let's give Vicky a minute. Let's give Vicky a minute to call back, and we'll do the promotional stuff for the other shows. Well, I've got Arden here. I haven't seen the schedule, so I'm not quite sure. But tomorrow is going to be an episode of Skeptalk. Good. Get Vicky on.
Hello?
Hi, Vicky. Buttons are confusing.
Hey. Sorry, yeah, I got disconnected.
Yeah, no worries. What I lost the note that we had. So what did you have for us tonight?
I'm trying not to press any buttons, so just bear with me. I'm just trying to make my phone, not press buttons. So I have,
Hello?
please tell me, can you hear me? Hello?
We
Can
can
you hear
now,
me?
but you went
We
away.
hear
You
you
went
now.
away for a minute there. Keep going.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so there was this experiment called the skull experiment. And I was hoping you might be able to maybe suggest an experiment that I can compare with it. So the skull experiment was with 5 professors from Cambridge. They had various degrees as far as what their PhDs were in, and one was a mathematician, one was a physicist. I'd have to look up the details of the others. But what they were doing was observing sessions twice a week with a group in school in Norfolk, England, and they did this from 1993 to 1998. So for 5 years, twice a week, they go to this place in England and conduct an experiment with the exact same environment, setup, etc. And what they've come back with, as far as the scientists and the report, is that there is something that we would consider an afterlife, as well as something that we might consider a UFO. So they have said that they've made contact. And I've really, really struggled to figure out how to look at this experiment, the footage that they have, and there's tons on this website. There's pages and pages. But I wanted to try to understand as objectively as possible whether or not it was BS or if it was legit, because there was a lot to look at, but I didn't know how to sort of gauge it and measure it.
You want to start, Matt?
I have not reviewed the material. There's no way I could
All right.
possibly.
Fair enough. I guess I wanted to, nor have I reviewed the material, but I guess I wanted to. Do you, as far as I can tell, this is written up in a few books and not in peer-reviewed journals. Is that your understanding as well, Vicky?
As far as I can tell, they had a debate that they have as far as like footage of this debate in London. I don't know whether or not the people who were there were of peerage or that same sort of level and had reviews.
Do you understand
that?
You understand that debates have like literally nothing to do with, whether something's true, right? Debates are, even though Matt's an expert debater, largely it's rhetoric and skill at debating. Like there's obviously it helps if you're debating something true, but I know some skilled debaters who are willing to enter a debate on either side of the equation, right? It's not, that's not how we determine truth per se. So I was asking about peer-reviewed journal. Like an experiment to me implies that it's scientific and that other scientists have said, yes, this is good methodology for a debate. And as far as I can tell, no such thing exists. In fact, if I'm looking this up, it seems like one of the major complaints of scientists seems to be the lack of proper scientific controls and the lack of actually publishing methodology so that other scientists can other scientists can attempt.
How do I do that? How do I find that out?
I think your description of it might have been a little off. The skull experiment. So the James Randi Educational Foundation addressed, this is like from, the original study was like from 2003. And a number of different individuals associated with the James Randi Educational Foundation, including Richard Wiseman and Ray Hyman, all pointed out problems and flaws in their methodology. Since then, there has not been an updated study with them. I'm hearing myself echoing back at me. There has not been an updated study that changed or improved on the test protocols. And so the most anybody could ever conclude from this is, that's weird. We should look into that further. And yet, for some reason, nobody's done that. Nobody has come up and able to establish a test to show this again. And so the time to believe this is after it has met scientific rigor to demonstrate this, not just when a few scientists went out, because scientists are incredibly easy to fool. I would recommend looking into Project Alpha, which was also done by James Randi, where he sent mentalists in to intentionally fool the scientists, and they did successfully. We have yet to have anyone who claims to be a medium or who has ever claimed any paranormal or supernatural power or anything related to an afterlife. None of them have ever demonstrated under test conditions that they can do what they say they can do, or that there's any there in the first place. So while I don't have a detailed assessment of this one, I thought you were saying skull, SKULL, but this is skull. This is SCOLE. Yep. And there were things about the thing. So the first thing I would say is nobody should believe anything until A, they understand it, and B, it has been reliably tested and verified by experts. Now, not everything even has an expert. Who's an expert in the supernatural? Well, there isn't any because there's no demonstrated supernatural, but there are people who are demonstrated experts in investigating claims of the supernatural and paranormal. And so far, they haven't met their burden of proof to demonstrate there's even a phenomenon. The James Randi Educational Foundation used to run $1 million challenge. And what would happen is somebody would say, I can do this. I can talk to the dead. I can do remote viewing. I can douse and find oil or water or whatever else. And then the JREF would get together with them and they would agree upon a test protocol. And then they would have that person tested. And Randy was never there because people were like, oh, Randy's got special powers and he's blocking them. I don't know what for. But I've been at a live testing of someone who claimed they had a paranormal ability. I was at the Amazing Meeting 7 with the JREF. To date, nobody even has been able to pass the preliminary test for the $1 million. Something like this study would have qualified as, hey, here's a claim. Let's move on to the next step, which is let's devise a test protocol that will rule out our bias, rule out these other things, and demonstrate that there's some sort of phenomenon here. And that was never done. And so until it's done, I have no grounds to assess this as a true or false. I can only assess it as has not met its minimal standards to even be considered.
Okay.
Vicky, I'm wondering what did you do? Before you called us? What steps did you take to authenticate this on your own, or was there nothing? You just sort of watched the video and it seemed good, and you gave us a call.
Yeah, it was the documentary that I'd seen, and it kind of made me wonder whether or not it was legit. I didn't know where to go sort of from there.
Okay.
Well, you can actually start. There's a link on Wikipedia that I just found called The Afterlife Experiments, which goes through some of the specific objections from the JREF and some follow-up stuff. There's also a few websites. I bet if you were to type in skull experiments debunked, even though that's not what actually happened, and it's nice that they're saying it hasn't actually been debunked, but the bigger issue is that something isn't true until we debunk it. Something doesn't count as true until it's been confirmed. So, because there are things that are unfalsifiable and untestable. And this, while it has been, an initial study thing, there was no follow-up. Ray Hyman wrote about it in Skeptical Inquirer. You can look up those articles. I don't recommend Wikipedia as like the primary source for any of this, but there are links there to all of this, including James Randi's article, Gary Schwartz's article, Ray Hyman's article. So there were people who looked into this and were unable to find enough there to continue pursuing it. And even the scientists that originally did this don't seem to have continued their research here.
Yeah, like I wanted to know why it was there wasn't anything after, and like there's someone who I need to find their social media handle and try to contact them because they were interested in trying to put some sort of Kickstarter fund together just to see if someone would in the scientific community at least be able to recreate the experiment and reconduct the experiment so that there was
Yep.
something to compare because it just seems like this is the only thing and I don't I don't know what that actually means. Like why didn't they do
Yeah.
it?
The only conclusion we can draw from that is nobody has had enough intellectual and financial interest to actually make the attempt to do a rigorous test. And I will say that one of the things that's occurred since the original testing was done is some criticism of their protocols. And it may be that when you tighten up your protocols, any perceived phenomenon just goes away because especially when people claim to be like psychic mediums, like John Edwards, the biggest douche in the universe. That's what South Park called him, and I agree because I find it incredibly disgusting that someone's going to pretend to be speaking to the dead and playing on the emotions of people who are grieving and all that. But what we've shown is that no so-called air quotes psychic has ever been able to demonstrate that they can do even the basics of what they claim to do under proper test conditions. And it's the same with dowsing and all kinds of stuff. That doesn't mean that the phenomenon doesn't exist. It doesn't mean we've proved that it's not real. It just means, and this is the cornerstone of skepticism, every time somebody fails one of these tests, it is a demonstration that on that day, in that way, they couldn't do what they said they were going to do. Doesn't mean they won't be able to do it tomorrow or under different circumstances, but nobody should believe it until they actually demonstrate it, and then we can reliably confirm it. So it ends up being one of the many potential weird curiosities about life and about humans, because we already know from great books like Extraordinary Popular Delusions and The Madness of Crowds, which is a 19th century book, of various phenomenon that convince people, shared delusions, all kinds of stuff, which we later went on to show, hey, this is about human psychology and what we're going to read into it. I don't know if that's the case here because nobody's done a good follow-up test. What's that?
Sorry, Matt, is that like herd mentality? Like the way that people sort of cling on to an idea together, they sort of feed it together?
Yes.
Okay.
One of my favorite experiments, there's a number of great experiments on human psychology, including having people walk into an elevator where everybody in the elevator is just facing the back wall. And then despite the fact that there's no reason for them to turn around and face the back wall with everybody else, most people tested would actually do it. And then there's other things on, what's the limit of people's responses to authoritarian stuff. So many great, it's so much more fun for me to learn about our psychological errors and quirks than it could ever be for, hey, I'm talking to the dead and I got a message. You know what? It's funny is I think I don't want to quote this wrong because Randy's dead and I loved Randy, but I think he's the one that said it's funny how these psychic mediums never say, "Ooh, I left the will in this spot and the treasure is buried at that spot." It's always, everything's wonderful here on the other side. You're going to be fine. I love you. I miss you. It's never anything substantial. It's always feely. And I think that's the appeal because we desperately miss connections with our lost loved ones. So of course, that's why one of the reasons I find it gross that people are potentially playing on that part of us.
Yeah, for sure.
And Vicky, you may not know this, but Matt has been and is currently a magician and illusionist. And I used to work in the film industry. I used to work in the film industry on visual effects even before there was, the AI and CG and some of these kind of things. So when it comes to video, video of people who are in completely near dark situations.
Yeah.
There's so many possible ways that video footage, even if it was shot in the 90s,
Yeah.
need not be, actual supernatural things. That I'd be incredibly cautious. There's no body saying that a film is a documentary or not, right? People like to say it's a document, something's a documentary, then you imbue it with, oh well, this must be true and be rigorous or whatever. No, anyone
Yeah.
can make something called a documentary. So just be cautious on those kind of things. Matt and I know firsthand many ways to fool people into tricking them into thinking they've seen things that they didn't really see. So
Thank
But
you.
the nice thing is,
Actually, I do.
oh,
Sorry,
let me
please
just say
continue,
this,
sorry.
and then I'll give you the last word. You don't even have to trick people. Magic works because people are eager to trick themselves. As a magician, I know how to do something that most people don't know how to do. And
Yeah.
the magic happens in their head because it is a confusing process where they're like, wait, it couldn't be that, it couldn't be that, it must be magic. And we do this even knowing we're at a show watching a trickster who's faking it. I can't count the number of times that myself and others, after doing a fairly simple magic trick, have had people freak out and think that we're using demonic powers to do it. And when I was a Christian, I was in the Navy. When I first got in the Navy, I was a Christian. I was obsessed with magic and even more so then, and would do card tricks. And I would do card tricks, and these guys would freak out and they'd be like, oh my God, he's got demonic power. So I would show them, no. Here's what I did. And I would show them the secret move. And, because I didn't want them to think I had demons and stuff. I was a good Christian kid. And so I'd show them the move, and I shit you not, more often than not, they would look at me and say, that's not what you did last time, which just lets me know I had practiced enough to be really good at it. But it's when I realized exposing it isn't going to fix anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, Vicki, thanks for
Yeah.
calling. I want to give you the last word. I appreciate that. I interrupted.
No, thank you. So this is one thing that I do not understand and I cannot get my head around. And it's like the basic laws of I guess energy is that it's neither created nor destroyed. So when it comes to our existence, our universe, etc., we all live, we all die, but there's this transition of energy and it changes after billions of years and more years than we can probably count to lead to the world that we know now. How has energy just not been able to organize itself into something that we could call God? Like, how could it not at least have evolved alongside with us if it's neither created nor destroyed? Or does it not work that way?
So the law of conservation of matter and energy suggests that within a closed system, matter and energy can't be created or destroyed. They can only change form. One could argue that energy has organized itself into matter, and that matter has organized itself into more complex matter, and that this is what we see in a universe that begins with a massive expansion and no chemicals at all, and then you get hydrogen, and then hydrogen gives birth to stars, and we get heavier elements and things in stars, and that this is all physical processes. Your question, though, of why hasn't energy evolved to become a God thing? A, I don't know that it hasn't. B, just because something hasn't been ruled out as impossible, that does not mean that it is actually possible. There may be limits on how much it can change, or there's a limit on how fast light can travel. It's not a speed limit sign where light's going, oop, I can't go any faster. It's just the physical fact of it. And so in a broad, diverse universe, and I would recommend, honey, is Aaron on Skeptalk tomorrow night?
No.
Okay. Keep an eye on the line. And the next time Dr. Aaron Adair is on Skeptalk or one of the shows or whatever, call in and ask him about this, because I'm probably getting it all wrong in the way I describe it. But your curiosity is on the right track of being able to get answers even if we don't have them now. And so the key thing is to say, that's really cool, that's curious, I don't know, let me go see if anybody else knows. And it may be the case that none of us know, and it may or may not be knowable, but we have this suspicion of, we know so much about how the universe works, we feel like we should know it all. Like, science has done so much, why can't we make a tree in a laboratory from absolutely nothing? Well, because A, that may not be possible. May not be possible. It may not be possible for us yet, but also we have a basic understanding of the diversity of life, but we don't have a sufficient understanding of the origin of life, even though we've demonstrated that physics allows for and robustly populates the galaxy and the universe with those basic building blocks of life. But it's like, if let's say I hid 5 $100 bills somewhere in the United States, that's a pretty big area for a $100 bill, and yet it is vanishingly small, both of them, with regard to the universe. None of those $100 bills are going to be of any use or get spent unless somebody actually finds them. And they may be in places where nobody can practically look. They may be in places where even if somebody could practically look, they're never going to. If those two things don't come in contact, the universe is a really big place, and it's just mostly empty or empty-ish. But yeah, I'm going to stop rambling. Keep asking questions. Ask a fuck ton of questions.
And Vicky, I'd like to offer 2 questions. Can I offer 2 questions that you might ask along these lines? I'm going to do whether you want me to or not. So you listed the first law of whether you know it or not. You listed the first law of thermodynamics: matter can neither be created nor destroyed, which is a natural law, right? It is one of the principles under which our natural universe operates under. And I guess one thing you might ask yourself is, are you suspecting that a natural universe should evolve into a supernatural thing? How would that work? If something is operating entirely under natural laws, how is it even reasonable to think that would someday, even if it takes trillions of years, birth a supernatural thing, right? Because it's just, to me, it's a little bit weird to assume that that adding up a trillion naturals should somehow equal supernatural, right? So there's that. Second, a lot of people consider God to be the creator. If the God that you're imagining has to have the attribute of being the creator, then at no point could a universe create its own creator, right? Like that doesn't follow. It doesn't make sense. I can't be my own parent. I can't give birth to my parent, right? So I'm just wondering if this question, even though it seems like a reasonable question to ask, ultimately there might be just physical barriers that make that expectation unreasonable. So you can add those to your collection of questions that you're going to ask yourself and think about, and hopefully this was helpful.
I totally will. Thank you so much. It really has been really enlightening. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for the call, Vicky. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. So yeah, I like people who are just asking all kinds of questions. Doesn't matter. You know, it could be, this is something that every kindergartner should learn, but doesn't. Or it could be something that nobody really has any knowledge of. We're still, exploring and discovering. But asking those questions, I mean, for me, that's what makes us who we are. It's what allows for advancement and progress, both with regard to like our common shared knowledge, but also what we can potentially uncover in the future. If we figure out how this little portion works, we can use that to evaluate other things. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to think one thing is analogous to another when it's not. But we explain things. We explain things in terms of other things we already have an understanding of. You cannot solve a mystery by appealing to a bigger mystery. And this is what theists are constantly trying to do. It's what an earlier caller was trying to do. Well, if the scientists can't show me the gene for God belief, then I'm going to say that our propensity for believing in God must, or almost certainly, or most likely comes from a God. It's not just shifting the burden of proof. It is saying, wow, what's the explanation for this? Ooh, Magic Man done it. Well, Magic Man is not an explanation because you don't understand Magic Man. Like another caller from today, Cindy, who can't shake this God belief, but can't tell you what it is. So not even trying to solve a mystery, but basically has been indoctrinated to be fearful of not acknowledging that there's a mystery. We're so terrified of this I don't know answer, even though the only thing that allows you to find the right answer is starting with I don't know. That there is no pursuit of the right explanation if you think you already have it. Why is there life? God. Why is that person alive? God. Why is that person dead? God. Why do I keep going into the kitchen and forgetting what I went in there for? God. Why did I need glasses now and not 20 years ago? God. Who's responsible for cancer? God. Where does love come from? A clear liquid that God showed me. There, I buttoned that up.
Nice. All right. Thank you so much to Stephanie, our call screener, and to our amazing producer, Arden, who always makes us look good. Appreciate. Hope everyone has a lovely day tomorrow and enjoy what you're doing.
Be sure you turn in for Skeptalk tomorrow night. Go to Line Merch and get yourself a Zerba shirt really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Can't hurt. It's going to be sexy. You can wear your sexy Zerba shirt to the 4th of July party. Boom. Patreon.com/calltheline. Don't forget about all the other shows. Huge thank you. Paul, I had such a great time. I hope to talk to you again soon.